Today we're here at Grace Cathedral with Steph McNally. She's in charge of children's programs, so she does everything from very, very small children to teenagers. She's working with a group who are getting confirmed very soon too. Steph, it's so good of you to talk to us today. We're so grateful for it. Can you tell us a little bit about just what you notice about how it's different for children who are growing up spiritually today versus children maybe in earlier generations? Like what's the landscape look like for young people today?
Well, that's a really wonderful question. I think in a lot of ways there are really wonderful movements in spirituality for young children. I think today there's a wonderful sense of it's important to invite children into a conversation and encourage them to ask their own questions and to wonder. I think maybe perhaps where in previous generations we were inclined to do more rote learning and to tell children what something means, now we really like to invite them to wonder and ask questions, and that's wonderful. I think the other thing that I would also observe at the same time is that as we've seen for everyone, there is families have very busy schedules on a weekend, including Sunday, and that might mean that children are experiencing worship in different ways. That of course means that when children are present, it's so important to provide them with opportunities to explore faith, and I think it also leaves a lot of room to think about how else we can connect with children and families and encourage their wondering.
Yeah, when in my old school, we had chapel, and we didn't call it chapel, but we called it wondering time.
Oh, that's great. That's
yeah,
great.
so everybody, I just had one of my students who's grown up, and she was talking about wondering time from all those years ago.
That's so great.
But yeah, the idea was that children are not just like an empty vessel that you just fill up with material, like you teach them all the things, but that they already have a spiritual life already.
Yeah, it's such a wonderful and important philosophy. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's funny because I was thinking of it is definitely when I was a child too. There are a lot more women involved in leadership positions than there were in the church of my childhood, and I think that's a big improvement too. It feels different in church than it did when I was a child.
Look, absolutely, and I think it is so important, as you know, for children to see a range of people leading. I think that teaches children who are constantly watching what adults do. It's so important for them to see women leading and men doing the work of Sunday school and teaching. You know, that teaches
And
great
Altar
things.
Guild.
Yes.
That's my future, Altar Guild. That's what I want to volunteer at when I'm not working every single Sunday. So tell me a little bit about what surprised you the most as you've kind of undertaken this ministry. Like, what have you learned in doing this work with children?
That's such a wonderful question. Always to begin with, I suppose, what I think all teachers will say that they learn something themselves, and I think through dialogue with children, I'm always impressed of how faith is a lifelong journey. I think having discussions with spirituality about children is a wonderful way to help develop the spirituality of any adults in conversation. Beyond that, I think what I am always refreshed by about having teaching children and working with children is that they are constantly open and curious and thoughtful about absolutely everything we discuss. And that I know we hear a lot about how children perhaps have a lot of screen time, have a lot of gadgets. I think children still love the tactile, the hands-on. I think there is something powerful about something for a child that they can touch, something they can hold. Beyond that, I think the patterns that what I'd say are adult church follows, the seasons of the church year, how we change colours at different times, we put out green or purple. I think children from a very young age love that too. And it helps me understand how we all enter into faith in that way, through the symbols that are all around us. I think that teaches us all the way through.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between a child's faith and an adult's faith? Like, what happens as we mature and evolve? Our spiritual life has to change too, as our maturity changes.
I mean, that's such a wonderful question, and I think there are strengths to each stage of the journey. I will always see in children, the thing that teaches me and impresses upon me is children can be absolutely in a moment. When you are telling a story, a sacred story, children are absolutely able to enter into that story and believe in it in a way that we perhaps, as more mature adults, hold back on. in the same way, when children are in nature, they are just able to enter into a kind of transcendent moment with what's going on around them. And I think that teaches me a lot. I think what comes as we mature and become adults is that we perhaps are more critical in our thinking about the things we read, and that has its place. I mean, we develop in a relationship with God. I guess that's the idea of formation. But I think ideally, if we can have a kind of continuum, so that the ways that a child can approach faith, I think it's wonderful if adults can hold something of that while going deeper into the questioning mode as well.
Right. It's just like Jesus talking about accepting the kingdom of God in the way that a child does. Yeah, that's so true. I think the older I get, just the more I'm not confident that we can prove. There's like very little that we can prove, and there's just a lot that we take on faith in it. And I don't just mean that in religious life. I mean that in all of our social interactions. There as a substrate. There's like something below that, which is directing and guiding us.
I think so. I think children can understand the little miracles of a day in a way that maybe teaches us as adults. Adults might work to have gratitude. A child, not always, but a child will see the wonder of a leaf or a sunrise or light through the window, and that can kind of teach all of us that we don't have to fight to believe in things. The wonder is there if we can just be open to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of my favorite things about churches in our time is it's the only place that's not segregated by age. It's the only place where you can have interactions between people in every different generation. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about what the older people can offer the young people and what they have to offer for the older people.
Oh, I think that's just, absolutely wonderful question. You mentioned our confirmation class. That has been a wonderful reminder. We're working with a group of faithful young people in their teens who are considering this big question of whether they will choose to be confirmed. And that straight away is perhaps one difference from the days before when you were just going to be confirmed. Now that debating is really important. A really beautiful thing that happened recently is we've had a group of mentors come and sit with the youth and be present in their questioning. And I know that's been a really powerful experience for all involved. I've seen the youth really respond to this sense of adults are sitting with them, giving them guidance, listening to their thoughts. And the adults likewise have really loved sitting with the youth and feeling that there's room for that conversation. I think everyone has so much to offer each other, and it begins with taking an interest in each other. That's so powerful. I think so many wonderful things grow out of that, out of that relationship.
Yeah, I just think how can we structure our community so there are more opportunities for those kind of interactions to happen? Because you're right, it's so important for the person who we're asking to be involved, and for the people we're hoping are going to benefit too.
I think it helps adults work out, like I said about teachers, it helps adults work out what they know, because sometimes we forget that we have learned and discovered things, and being able to share that with youth helps it crystallize in your own mind. And I think the youth can give us guidance as well. They see the world in maybe different ways. They see different points of difficulty in the world. They can bring that to adults.
Yeah.
They can play a role in that conversation.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things. I just feel like I'm learning so much from people in the younger generations. And what a blessing it is to have that, like a slightly different perspective on the world, which is generational.
Yes, absolutely.
It makes me wonder how different, like 7 generations back, people would have been.
Absolutely.
That's, I mean, the miracle of the Bible is that here we are reading these accounts and stories that are, 2,000 years old, and that they still speak to us. They still have a power for us.
I think when we share a story of the Bible, and to hear a young child still with delight or wonder gasp or at a Jonah in the well, to lean in, it gives me that almost that view back into time, and to go, this is how the story was passed on originally, and the kernel of it has been passed on and passed on. It's just wonderful.
Yeah, I love it. Well, we're so grateful. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us. Steph McNally, she works with the children programs. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Malcolm Clemens Young. Thanks for watching More Good News.